Pirates players assault Ohtani after Dodgers walk-off. It took 3 seconds. That is how long it took for one of the most electric moments in Dodger Stadium this season to become something else entirely. Something darker. Something that had nothing to do with the 10 innings of baseball that had just been played. Something that will be talked about long after the walk-off hit itself has faded from the immediate conversation. Tommy Edman's game-winning hit landed. The Dodgers won 5-4. 10 innings of back-and-forth baseball that had the stadium operating at the kind of sustained volume that only close games in late innings produce. The celebration began the way walk-off celebrations always begin. Players rushing from the dugout. The pile forming. The release of everything that 10 innings of tension had built inside that clubhouse finding its way out in the open air of a stadium that was already on its feet. And then 3 Pittsburgh Pirates players walked into it. Not toward their own dugout. Not toward the visiting clubhouse tunnel. Toward the celebration. Toward the middle of it. Toward Shohei Ohtani. What happened in the next few moments was not a baseball play. It was not competitive intensity that crossed a line in the heat of a game. The game was over. The final out had been recorded. The result was decided. What happened after Tommy Edman's hit connected with the seats in the corner of Dodger Stadium was not a continuation of baseball by other means. It was a decision. 3 people made it simultaneously. And the consequences of that decision are going to extend considerably beyond the night it was made. The walk-off itself deserved a better ending than the one it received. 10 innings between these two teams had produced the kind of game that reminds people who have grown skeptical of baseball why they started following it in the first place. The Dodgers had trailed. They had clawed back. They had found themselves in extra innings against a Pirates team that was not playing like a team content to simply compete against the Dodgers and absorb the result. The Pirates had come to Dodger Stadium with something to prove. That much had been apparent across the full 10 innings. Every at-bat carried an edge that went slightly beyond the ordinary competitiveness of a regular season interleague game. Every exchange between the benches had a temperature that the umpires were monitoring even when the action on the field appeared normal. Something had been building. Nobody could have predicted exactly how it would release. When Edman connected in the 10th, the stadium noise reached a level that physically changed the air inside it. The kind of volume that you feel in your chest rather than just here. Dodger Stadium doing what Dodger Stadium does when the home team gives it a reason to become fully alive. The celebration began. And 3 Pirates players began moving in the wrong direction. They reached Ohtani before anyone fully processed what was happening. That is the detail that the people who were closest to it keep returning to. The speed of it. The directness of it. The absence of the hesitation that might have existed if this had been an impulsive decision made in a moment of competitive frustration. They moved toward him with a purposefulness that suggested the decision had been made before Edman's hit had even landed. The shoving started immediately. Not the tentative, chest-bumping posturing that baseball brawls sometimes begin with before cooler heads intervene and the whole thing disperses without anyone getting seriously hurt. This was more immediate than that. More physical. The kind of contact that made the Dodgers players closest to the celebration respond not with words but with bodies. Moving between the 3 Pirates players and Ohtani with the urgency of people who understood in an instant what was happening and what needed to happen next. The benches emptied. Both of them. The visiting dugout and the home dugout releasing their contents onto a field that 30 seconds earlier had been the site of a celebration and was now the site of something that required every umpire on that crew moving at a pace that umpires rarely need to move. The stadium noise that had been joy became something else. Still loud. Louder, possibly. But the quality of it had changed completely. The kind of crowd noise that carries confusion and alarm rather than celebration. The kind that happens when 60,000 people simultaneously realize that what they are watching is not what they came to watch. The Dodgers players who reached Ohtani first did not hesitate. They put themselves between him and the three Pirates players with the instinctive protectiveness of teammates who had understood the target of what was happening without needing it explained. In the chaos of a bench-clearing brawl, with bodies moving in every direction and voices competing to be heard over the crowd noise and the umpires attempting to establish some kind of physical order, the Dodgers players closest to Ohtani formed something that looked less like a baseball brawl response and more like a deliberate shield. He was not going to be left alone in the middle of it. That decision was made collectively and immediately by the people around him. Not through any coordination or communication. Through the simple shared understanding of teammates who had spent enough time with each other to act from the same instinct when the moment required it. Ohtani himself was not passive in the chaos. He is not built for passivity, and the people who know him understand that. But the players around him absorbed most of what the three Pirates players were directing at the situation before it could fully reach him. The umpires worked through the mass of players with the grim efficiency of officials who have managed these situations before and understand that the priority is separation rather than adjudication. Get the bodies apart. Create the distance that allows the temperature to drop. Everything else comes later. It took longer than it should have. That detail will matter when the league office reviews what happened. Dave Roberts was not a calm man when he faced the cameras. He was a controlled man. There is a difference. Calm suggests the absence of strong feeling. Roberts was not without strong feeling on this night. The control was visible in the way he chose his words and the pace at which he delivered them and the particular stillness he maintained in his upper body while his eyes communicated something that the stillness was working hard to contain. He confirmed what had happened plainly. Three Pirates players. The celebration area. Ohtani as the specific target of the confrontation. A reporter asked him whether he believed it was premeditated. Roberts looked at the reporter for a moment. He said he was going to allow the league's process to reach its own conclusions about the nature of what had happened. He said that was the appropriate response and he intended to give the appropriate response. Then he paused. And in that pause, before the next sentence arrived, the room understood that the appropriate response and the complete response were not the same thing tonight. He said that his players had protected their teammate. He said he was proud of them for that. He said that in a situation that escalated as quickly as this one had, the response of his players had been exactly what he would have wanted it to be. He did not say anything further about the three Pirates players directly. He did not need to. Inside the visiting clubhouse, the atmosphere was the atmosphere of an organization that understood it had a serious problem. Not the problem of losing the game. Losses were processed and absorbed and prepared against for the next game. That was the ordinary rhythm of a baseball season, and no one inside a professional organization confused it for a crisis. The problem was what three of their players had done after the loss. The Pirates organization released a statement through the appropriate channels. Carefully worded. Acknowledging that the incident was being taken seriously. Expressing that the behavior did not reflect the values of the organization. The standard architecture of an institutional response to something that the institution cannot defend and understands it cannot defend. But statements travel in one direction and accountability travels in another. And the league office was already moving in the direction that accountability required. Don Kelly faced his own cameras with the expression of a manager who had watched his team compete for 10 innings and then watched three members of that team undo everything that competition had meant with a decision made in the 3 seconds after the final out. He did not deflect. He did not suggest that the chaos had been mutual or that the circumstances had been more complicated than they appeared. He sat with the full weight of what his players had done in a way that suggested a man who understood that minimizing it was not available to him as an option. He said it was wrong. Directly. Without the qualifying language that public statements sometimes use to acknowledge wrongdoing while simultaneously softening its edges. He said it was wrong, and he said it did not represent what he expected from the people in his organization, and he said the players involved would face whatever consequences the league determined were appropriate and that the organization would not contest those consequences. His voice was flat in the way that voices go flat when emotion has been compressed into something that can be spoken in front of a microphone without breaking. He said one more thing before he left the room. He said that Shohei Ohtani had done nothing to deserve what was directed at him tonight. He said it simply. Without elaboration. Without the context or the explanation that surrounded every other sentence he had delivered in that press conference. Just that. Ohtani had done nothing to deserve it. Tommy Edman's walk-off hit will remain in the record. The Dodgers won 5-4 in 10 innings. That result is permanent. But the walk-off celebration that should have defined the night was interrupted before it could fully form. 3 people made a decision in 3 seconds that turned a moment of joy into something that required umpires and teammates and organizational statements and a league investigation to process. The celebration was taken from the players who earned it. That is what 3 seconds cost on this particular night at Dodger Stadium. And the bill for those 3 seconds is still being calculated. But it is going to be significant. For 3 Pittsburgh Pirates players, it is going to be very significant indeed.